Women Innovators. Interviews with women with big messages and big missions, sharing their stories to inspire you to live your passion and step up to make the world a better place. Here's your host, Tammy Patzer.
Hi, everyone. This is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really excited because today my guest is Yamilca Rodriguez. She is an artist, entrepreneur, and activist, and she was born in Caracas, Venezuela, and she is currently in Louisville, Kentucky. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in industrial design and a Master's of Business Administration. She has collaborated with the best graphic and advertising agencies in the nation to design comprehensive brand strategies and consumer product innovations. She's facilitated more than 70 design thinking sessions around the world, crafting brand visions and stories that span multiple categories and lead highly influential billion-dollar brands. She created the Archetype Method, and it helps companies gain a more in-depth understanding of their customers. By defining their brand archetype, they can implement unforgettable customer experiences across multiple channels and touch points. So envision this, envision your customers' needs and boost the customer adoption and drive powerful product or service demand. Well, welcome. I'm really happy you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'm really curious because the Archetype Method. So tell me more about what inspired you to create your business.
Yeah, so I worked at a big brand company for over 13 years. And what happened was I started in innovation. So I got to do a lot of projects that were future thinking. So at the time, it was like, what's skincare going to be in 2020? We're in 2020 now. But this was more than 15 years ago. So it was, and then I moved from kind of innovation to current business. And in that span, we did a lot of consumer projects. So we got to travel the world, meet, talk to different cultures and different people about our products, because I was an industrial designer, which I design products. And so it's also called product design. And I would get to take my products and share them with thousands of consumers and get feedback and understand their preferences and why they loved certain products and certain things. The other thing that we did was we also worked a lot on personalities or personas, what we call personas. So we would craft a particular persona that would be our number one buyer, the aspiration to that. And we did that also with archetypes. And so I became kind of fascinated with personalities and cultures and archetypes and all this. And so when I left the company, I wasn't sure kind of what I wanted to go do. And I kind of ventured out in a different sort of business, completely out of the realm. I kind of went into fashion for a while. I loved fashion for a long time, so I went there. But realized that really my gifts were in design strategy and branding and all the things that I had learned over all those years working at Procter & Gamble. So I decided to kind of put a methodology together. And I do have a partner, and my partner and I kind of put together, and we worked together for many years, and she's really an amazing strategist and expert in archetypes. And together we kind of put this methodology, and because we really wanted to help people with less resources, like smaller companies, entrepreneurs, to really be able to use these more sophisticated tools that are much more difficult because they just don't have the funds to really do it. So we made it super simple for people to really type themselves and understand their brand archetype. And what we do with this is, it's all based on psychology. So naturally, there's going to be somebody who's attracted to you. So then we kind of went into discovering the super fan, what we call the super fan, or because based on your brand archetype, you have a super fan that is attracted to you. So that's where we are now, and we're super excited about where it's going.
So we all have our super fans. I think you're right, because I notice with people who work with me that if they want to work with me, they love me and they want to work with me. And you're right. People don't always know, I've heard it called their superpower, or, who you are and why and how you attract. In our pre-interview a little bit, you mentioned something. And so I want to actually ask you about that. You said that you've created a quiz at brandarchetype.co. Can you tell me a little bit more about that quiz and what some of the questions are that you ask people to help them uncover this brand archetype?
Yeah. So, I've been wanting to create a quiz for a while. But since we actually work with 12 archetypes, at first it was really, how did we define the questionnaire? Because you can't ask so many questions because people just don't, the attention span is very short. So we were trying to see what was the best way, but then we're like, oh, well, this is the way. It's super easy. The archetypes actually live in 4 different quadrants. And so I decided to kind of define, and each quadrant has 3, right? So 3 times 4 is 12. So I wanted to ask an overall question around that particular quadrant. So for example, we have a quadrant that we call the belonging quadrant. So it's all the archetypes that are more about connection and that really deep understanding of the person and these communities and affiliations. And so those 3 archetypes that live in that quadrant are caregiver, lover, and good guy, girl next door. So because those are the particular ones, I'll ask a question more around, is your brand about connecting and affiliates and memberships? And so then if they say yes, then I take them to what quote defines you. I don't really talk about archetypes yet because you don't want to predispose something so people think, oh, well, I think I'm more of a good guy, or I think I'm more of a this. So you just ask the questions more around their values. And then you take them to a quote and you say, okay, which quote connects more with you? And actually, there's only 2 questions that are asked. There's 4 questions. And then from that, you pick one, you select one, and then you ask 3 more questions and you select one of those. And then you're typed, your brand archetype. And then what happens from there is that it shows you your archetype. And because opposites attract, so how we were talking about the quadrants, so right below the belonging quadrant, we have the independent quadrant. And so we've mapped out this particular archetype has a opposite, which is the super fan, because opposites attract, and it's all based on psychology. We've done thousands of audits that kind of has taken us to this. So it's really super simple. You can kind of figure out where your brand is. It maps out your brand archetype plus your super fan. So what's really important about this is that some people take this and make it more about their personality versus their brand personality. So that's something to watch for. Make sure that you're thinking about your brand as you do this. But sometimes people's brand personality is actually their personal brand, which works well as well.
Wow, I'm excited about that. So to take that quiz, you go to brandarchetype.co, and then you could take that quiz. I think it's interesting because you made a lot of points there that made me think about how we are. We think a lot of times that it is about our personality, but it may not be that. It may be different things. So I'm excited about
Exactly.
that. So when you were creating this business, what would you say some of the big hurdles have been for you? Because a lot of the listeners for Women Innovators are entrepreneurial women, that they're typically, women who have these big messages and big missions. So they're very interested, and I am too, in what are some of those obstacles and hurdles that you've managed to overcome, and how did you do it?
Yeah. So, it's super interesting because sometimes, although I am a branding expert and I worked in branding for many years, when it comes to your own business, you kind of forget some of the things that you preach about, right? Or you don't actually do everything that you preach about. So one of the hurdles for me at the beginning was actually trying to figure out of all this knowledge that I have gathered, how to make it something super simple and easy for people to understand, right? Because what I did tends to be very complex. And because I worked at a huge corporation, we have a lot of complex theories and methodologies that people who really haven't worked in a huge corporation may not necessarily understand. So really being able to synthesize it. And it doesn't happen like that second. It happens over testing. So what I had to do, and I learned a lot from this, is test out the concept, right? So have a few friends of mine that own businesses go through the methodology and ask them questions and ask them what worked and what didn't work. And then as I decided to take this online, there's a lot of technical hurdles. What is the best way to kind of simplify it so you can launch something? Because we can launch super complex things, but we have to figure out, what do I need to do to launch now and not in 4 or 5 years when I have the money to spend on technology, right? What resources do you have today to kind of make that happen? And so that's kind of phase 2. And then what really was interesting as I got to do more training and kind of started developing my own brand and brand videos, and got more in touch with kind of being able to talk on camera and kind of define the space, because it's complex. Like if I went through the whole methodology, which I usually don't for people, it's just, I've been studying these for over 15 years, so I know them backwards and forwards. But for somebody who just gets into it, I just need to give them the answer because it's just too complex to explain how you get there, right? Here's the answer. Do these things, understand how to do these things and move your brand forward. So really being able to learn from others and listening to others and being okay with eliminating things that don't work for you. I think sometimes we get attached to this concept or this thing that we're kind of birthing to, and we don't let people give us feedback that is important for us to move forward. But one of the things that happened actually this year that got me to really doing the Superfan, because the Superfan wasn't even part of this, which I think is one of the most important things out of this whole theory, is that we did a retreat in Bali. And we kind of were able to get a little deeper with the people who went to the retreat. And we discovered that the Superfan thing was a important piece of the puzzle for them. And so that's what we've decided to switch all of our communication towards that element because we found that people, they can deliver on their brand, but they don't really understand who their customer is. Or it takes them a long time to understand their customer. This kind of maps it out really quickly for you because they are naturally and they're psychologically attracted to you. So you can start marketing to those people in this specific way of messaging and communicating. So that's really been the breakthrough. But I will say that I think the most important thing is to get feedback, listen to the feedback, implement the feedback, test it, do it again and again and again, and your product will really get better and better as you apply and simplify.
Wow, I've been listening to you, and the concept of the superfan, I think, is really interesting because you're flipping it from it being all about my brand and who I am to who is actually your customer. And I think you're right. Many people, they struggle with understanding who is that super fan or who is your customer. And they're so afraid to, I think, find out because they're always thinking, well, I can provide service to the world. And we all know that that's not accurate, that it really is about a specific person who wants what you've got and they're attracted to you. So that's really interesting to me. And of course, going to Bali for a retreat to learn about this sounds really great too. Are you going to do more retreats or was that a one-time thing?
No, yes, I hope to do more because I found that, you just said something that was super critical, and it's that we don't get deep enough. We don't get deep enough into understanding our customer. We understand them superficially, but understanding them at a deep level and understanding those emotions of that particular person is so critical to our success and to the growth of our business. And you can't do that like, yeah, I can tell you're a super fan, and then you have to do the work to really get deep into that and that piece. But doing these retreats really helps people focus. And I think I feel so fortunate to have been able to do that because I would have never gotten to this space myself. So I'm really, I really want to keep doing them. Obviously not at the moment, but eventually I do want to do at least one retreat a year where we can get a strong group of innovators and entrepreneurs that can really integrate this concept into their business.
Well, I know that it's very exciting to me. And I think the concept of the brand archetype is very needed. Like everything that you've said makes so much sense to me because I've been working in the authority footprint space for about 11 years and, trying to do exactly what you're talking about. How do I represent what I do to people in a way that I'm attracting the right people? Because if I attract the wrong people, they literally drain me of all my energy. And when I attract the right people, I feel energized and appreciated and loved. And so what you're talking about seems very, just very, very important. I wanted to ask you something a little more personal about as an entrepreneur, and obviously right now, you can't go on a retreat to Bali until things stabilize in our world. But what are some things that you do that help you to stay motivated no matter what's going on?
That's a really good question. I will say, and I've been saying this for a while, structure gives you freedom. And I am a person who is very easily can be working on 20 different things because I just love new innovations, new theories. I'm actually working on 10 different things right now at the moment. But really what this time has really given me is the opportunity to focus in and eliminate those things that aren't best for me. And so there's some particular things that I need to do for myself, my self-care, that will get me to that focus. And for me, that's meditating and exercising. So if I can get up in the morning and meditate first thing and then go do my exercises, I have the rest of the day to really focus on those things that are important. And I think if I wasn't able to do that, I don't think I could get as much done as I have been able to. It also frees my mind up. It kind of gives me and energizes me. It gives me more potential for new ideas and new concepts and for things to flow much easier. So I do think that in this time, a lot of us or some of us tend to kind of procrastinate because it's easy to do that right now because your mind kind of doesn't know what to do. But I think being able to kind of focus those efforts and exercise and kind of have your mind energized to then put a schedule together that's also critical and say, these are the things I must get done this week. And being able to organize myself that way. And then I have time to do other things that are kind of fun and take my time away to dedicate to family and things like that.
Well, I like that structure because I know on the days when I am more structured, I am amazed. I said, how can I get this much work done? Because all these other people like, I'm bored. And I'm like, I'm never bored. I have been bored
I'm never bored.
since I was like a kid. And my mom said, there's no reason to ever be bored if you are always doing something. And now I've always got something or some project, or what I'm finding that's very interesting are things that I started and put aside are coming back around and saying, hey, it's time to pay attention to me. So I think that's really important. And I like the idea that you add the meditation, the slowing down, and then of course exercise is like speeding up and the mixture of all that, and then having structure, because it would be pretty easy when I have to actually remind myself what day it is. So I do a public service and I put the day and the date into Facebook every day so I can tell what day it is. I do it more for me, but I know that for other people, the days do just have a tendency to blend. And when you're busy like I am, sometimes I don't know what day it is. I had a meeting yesterday and it had already been a week since I talked to the person. And I was like, are you kidding? It's already been a week since we had our last conversation. It just seemed like it was a few moments. I wanted to ask you about what would it look like to work with you? We talked about the quiz, so that would be a starting point. But if I wanted to work with you, how would we work together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on the quiz, I actually have them go to a 30-minute discovery call because what I've given you is just your primary archetype and your superfan, but there's actually a secondary archetype that then maps you into a specific quadrant And that gives you kind of this whole scope of how to think about your business, your messaging, and all those things. And it also gives you a secondary archetype as well, a secondary superfan as well. So what I do is I get them on a call, make sure that the way that they've done the quiz is the way that they should go forward on their business. And then I do two things from there. I have a full customized report that I'm doing right now. So it takes about 3 to 5 days to kind of go and write everything about your primary, secondary, how it's mapped, how you use it. And then I send you that report and I kind of walk you through it so you understand what it all means and how it works for how it would work for you. And then I have also an archetype. I call it the brand essence course module that goes through all the courses, each archetype. It talks about each of them. It talks about how they are as a customer versus as a brand archetype. And then it goes through brand positioning, how to strategize around your particular brand. And it's an entire course. It's that you would go through on your own. So those are the two things. Now, if it's a little bit of a bigger business, then we can talk about different consulting opportunities, because other than that, I also do trends work. So we look at trends and map out for those businesses today that are kind of need to pivot, need to do something different than what they've been doing, or have been kind of stuck in one place and need to move themselves. That's another thing I offer. I also teach design thinking, which is creative problem solving for the university at the MBA level. And I'm offering an online course for that program right now that I'm thinking about also transferring it to an online program for a broader community as well.
Wow, that sounds like fun. I know right now a lot of universities are really amping up their online program.
I know. I was just offered this actually a month ago, because the program that I was teaching for them was a global program where all these students from outside would come in, and I would teach for 5 days straight in the summer, and they've decided to cancel that program altogether. And so they're like, well, we're canceling the program, but we love your course, so we'd love for you to teach it online. And so I'm now moving that to online, and now they want to give me more, I'll be teaching not only in the summer now, but in the spring as well. So that's been interesting how they're all shifting to that.
So where is that this course is offered?
At the University of Louisville.
Oh, okay, Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Wow. So we could talk all day, because you do a lot of things I'm very interested in. So right now you have the quiz is at brandarchetype.co, and then your website is archetypemethod.com. If people want to reach out to you, what is your preferred method of contact?
Yeah. Actually, taking the quiz and getting on a discovery call is pretty easy, because we can contact super quick on the calendar that way. But also, if you just want to email me with questions, you can reach me at contact@yamilca.com.
Okay. So that is your first name, and that is Yamilca. Okay.
Yes.
That's good. Before I let you go, is there anything you'd like to add to what we've been talking about today?
Yeah, actually, I forgot to mention, I'm also on Instagram, Miss Yamilca, and I do have a Facebook group on Archetype Method on Facebook. And those are also two ways to kind of get in touch with me. I also started brand_archetype on Instagram, and that'll be filled with a lot of our new work that we're kind of doing around superfans. I'm really excited to kind of be able to offer this to a broader community of entrepreneurs. I think people, we're trying to make things easier for you, not more complex. The world is complex enough to kind of understand branding. I think people think that that branding is their logo and their colors and their photography, and it's much broader than that, because we are in the era of relationships, brand relationships, and so you do need to build that sort of relationship with your customer. And so this is a good way to kind of really go there and use the work, because we're also developing a course specifically for you to be able to think about your messaging as you think about building your brand.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really excited, and everyone definitely go take the quiz. It's at archetype, archetype.co, and I'll make sure that all of these links are in the show notes, so everyone, you can just click and go directly in. So thank you so much. I learned a lot, and it really makes me think about, the branding concept and about superfans, because like you said, if you can really understand who wants to work with you, boy, you think about that, then you're really going to have a super fan experience on both sides of the issue. So thank you again so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I so appreciate it.
Everyone, this is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.
You've been listening to Women Innovators with Tammy Patzer. To learn more, please go to womeninnovatorsradio.com. And please do subscribe and share to spread the big messages and big missions to change the world.